All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and do experiment number one. In your lab books, the name of the experiment is Simple Circuit with Resistance R1. You'll need to draw this on your worksheet that you find on Canvas so that you can verify you're designing the circuit properly. I will check it, and then the first step here is to, well, the third step after we draw it and review the activity, the circuit, is to, number 3, with your multimeter, measure the value of R1. So with our multimeter, we're going to rotate this to ohms. I always start at the lowest number. On this meter, it's 200 ohms. I'm going to use my test leads. When your lab sheet talks about value, they're talking about ohms. Because R1 is a resistor, it is going to be ohms is going to be the value. So the resistance of R1, I take my leads. You got to make sure these probes are actually making good contact with the metal in R1. I'm going to kind of push them into the metal a little bit so we get good contact. And if you are able to see that, I have 9.8 ohms on resistor R1. Okay, you see it jumping to 9.9. That's because the temperature is increasing as I run current through it. So that's as temperature goes up, resistance goes up. The next step here is we're going to run some wires on the circuit board here. Now that we know that the resistance is 9.8 ohms, I'm going to run my wire for my power source, which are the red leads on top, to R1. And then I'm going to grab a black test lead, and I'm going to go from the other side of R1, and we're going to complete the path to a ground circuit here at the base of the board. Okay, so now we have power going through R1. Okay, we're going to measure the voltage at R1. So we're going to turn our meter, we're going to leave our test probes in the voltage and common ports. We're going to rotate this to volts. These are 20 volt circuits on these circuit boards. Excuse me, they're 12 volt circuits. So we'll need to use the 20 volt scale. And then we're going to measure the voltage at R1 here. That's 9.92 volts. Okay. So that's here I would put the value was 9.8 ohms. The voltage at R1 was 9.9 volts. Okay, and then we're going to calculate the amps. So we would go ahead and use Ohm's law to calculate the amps, and then we would complete the 3 formulas here to identify electromotive force, also known as voltage, intensity, also known as amps, and resistance, known as ohms. That's how we complete experiment number 1.